First, for Chairman Green, why is it so important? Why was it so important for the committee to include reconstruction of the border wall in the bill? And what benefit does that give to our national security?
So the issue of the border wall, and thanks for the question, it's pretty simple. Walls work. They do work. CBP actually itself published an article on it. When the wall was built in Yuma, there was an 87% decrease in illegal crossings from FY19 to FY20. There is others, October 2020 CBP press release, and I quote, "The results speak for themselves. Illegal drug, border crossings, and human smuggling activities have decreased in areas where barriers are deployed. The border wall is forcing drug smugglers to where we are best prepared to catch them, our ports of entry." The walls do work, despite arguments made to the contrary. And there was a study done on the San Diego wall when it was implemented that showed a 98% decrease in illegal border crossings. So substantially, and I'll just speak as a military guy who used to, I mean, we use walls to canalize people, which means to make them all move to a certain area where you can better control them, you can better assist them. They work. And they're, clearly I agree with Chief Ortiz when he said that we're not going to build a wall from sea to shining sea. It's not necessary, but there are areas where it would be beneficial. When asked under oath in front of our committee just recently, the chief of the Border Patrol, currently working for the Secretary of, Secretary Mayorkas, said that he disagreed with President Biden's immediate stop of border wall construction. I think that says it all.
Thank you. One of the things that I heard when I was in Uvalde is that the illicit activity is totaling $3.5 million a week in drug trafficking, human trafficking, organ trafficking, and other things. Can you elaborate on the improvements of the technology that are included in this bill and how that assists DHS in apprehending human and drug traffickers and smugglers?
So in this bill, we have a technology plan that we're asking for from the department, where they will go and build out their basically their technology requests. And it also requires that they create a plan that extends beyond the current needs, so that they're forecasting how they'll do acquisitions, et cetera, for any new technology that's developed or implemented or evolves over the next several years. So the bill specifically says that they have to create a plan, come back to us with that plan, and then we'll execute, appropriations, et cetera, to get that done.
Thank you. Mr. McClintock, regarding the crisis of the unaccompanied children at our southwest border, we've heard some of this from Dr. Burgess, but isn't it true that the Obama-Biden administration sought to have the authority to quickly screen and return children back home?
Yes, they did. And by the way, we do that. Any child that comes to us through Canada or Mexico, is a resident of those countries, we get them safely home. That's what you do. If a little waif showed up on your doorstep, you wouldn't take them 10 doors down to the sweatshop or worse. You'd get them safely home. And this bill simply says that we're going to try to get every child safely home. Because again, you want to stop this. This is trafficking. The cartels are doing the trafficking. They are making thousands and thousands of dollars on every child they bring into this country through this horrific and dangerous process. I've asked the Border Patrol, how do we stop this? Send them home. The cartels don't give refunds. The moment one of these children is returned to their home, the trafficking stops because their business will dry up. And for some reason, we can't get our colleagues to understand this fundamental point.
And isn't that the same authority that we're providing in H.R. 2?
Yes.
Yes. Regarding the changes to asylum law, isn't it true that those with legitimate asylum claims can have their cases heard faster, years faster than they would under the current
Well, of course, the courts are completely glutted now with phony asylum claims. Why are they making the phony asylum claims? Because they work. You make a phony asylum claim, it's very simple. You get instant admission to the United States. You get a free ticket anywhere you want to go. You get lots of free stuff, including cash. You get indefinite residency permission. You get indefinitely work authorization. And years from now, when they finally get around to your case and you're ordered deported, you can be very confident you're not going to be deported. Under this administration, we've got 1.2 million deportation orders that are simply going unenforced. They've been through the process, they've been ordered deported, and the administration simply refuses to enforce those deportations. That's why they're coming. Now, this bill says, by the way, this bill says, if you want to make an asylum claim, you may, and it will be processed. But we're going to enforce the existing law. This is not a new law. The existing law that says that during the pendency of your claim, you must be detained. As Justice Alito said, shall be detained means shall be detained. The problem is this administration refuses to do so. So what we're saying is if you're not going to be detained here in the United States, you're free to return to Mexico. You're free to seek a residency in any safe third country that we have an agreement with, but you're not going to be admitted into the country. Suddenly, all of the incentives to make phony claims disappear, and now you've got room for the legitimate claims to be heard in a timely manner.
Thank you. Yes, just for a minute.
I mean, it's just not true that the administration is not deporting people. We just were dealing with the deportation of a gentleman in my district.
There are 1.2, Ms. Scanlon, there are 1.2 million deportation orders that this administration is not enforcing. Well, this administration, this president, on his first day in office, ordered ICE not to enforce deportations. You can't get any more brazen than that.
I will also just add that, you know, my husband has been a prosecutor for 16 years. He's now a judge. And during the Obama administration could not get people that committed violent crimes and sex crimes deported. They are in U.S. prisons. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Republicans, once again, are leading with the strongest border security bill that we've seen in years. I hope that our Democrat colleagues will finally join us in securing the border. As I said, this is the first step in comprehensive immigration reform. We must secure the border for all the reasons that we've discussed today, and I'm proud to support this bill. With that, I yield back to Mr. Norman. Thank you.
Chair, thanks, gentlelady. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate the panelists coming in. You know, the sad part about all this that we're seeing play out, and Congressman McClintock, you mentioned it, you're only as good as if you enforce it. Now, everybody's up in arms about Title 42 ending. They haven't, since this administration took office, they haven't been enforcing it anyway. The numbers show that. I've been to the border like I think most of y'all. It is sickening to see what's happening. It's sickening to see the children that are getting raped. It's sickening to see the fentanyl that came into South Carolina, and I would add we're all border states now, that could have killed half of the state of South Carolina, which is 2.4 million people. We've got a total population of 5.2. It's sickening to see the farmers we met with when we went to the border. Fences are being cut. Walls are being built to protect themselves. To hear the farmer plead with us, please do something. It's sickening to see law enforcement who we met with this week who don't know who in the world they're stopping when illegals are committing crimes in this country. The blood is on the hands of this administration for letting this go. And it cannot be said any clearer. And to even try to make the argument that during the Trump administration, the numbers were not down. He was building 900 miles of wall and going to have designated points of entry. If walls don't work, take the locks off your house, folks. Take the doors down. Let everybody in. It doesn't work. And Ms. McClintock, like you mentioned, the schools that are being overrun now, the emergency rooms that are being overrun all over this country. It's sickening to see that we could solve it, but they're just not going to do it. This administration is devoid of any reason. They're doing it for one thing, votes. And that's, it was shown in New York City when they're giving them licenses. It was shown when we were visiting. They were getting on airplanes. Where was the COVID vaccine card that the illegals had? They had none. And so the NGOs that are supporting this, is sickening to see this. And the issue that all of us face, how are you going to walk this back? How do you walk this back in America? You can't, unless you line buses up all over the country and deport people back. And I'm sick and tired of hearing, you have dreamers. You have people who are valid, who want to be here. That's true, but you verify it. And that's what this administration is not going to do. Ms. McClintock, from an enforcement standpoint, and let's say this bill passes the House and the Senate in a perfect world, where's the enforcement part of this? We've got another year of horror under this administration. Where is the order going to come to enforce anything that's in this bill before us?
It's a blessing sometimes and a curse sometimes, but in a democracy, you get the government you vote for. This is the government that the people of the United States voted for. If it turns out it's a government that is not to their liking, they have the opportunity to rectify that in the next election. I am convinced this is a deliberate policy. It will continue as long as the people responsible for it remain in office. If you want to know why all of this is happening, this is exactly, if you voted for the Democrats, this is exactly what you voted for. And if that surprises you, you weren't paying very close attention, because they made it very clear this was their intention. So ultimately, it will be up to the American people. Our job is to provide the laws that can be used to restore the integrity of our borders, as history screams this warning at us that countries that either cannot or will not enforce their borders simply aren't around very long. Without enforcement of our immigration laws, we have no immigration laws. Without immigration laws, we have no borders. And if we have no borders, we are no longer a country. We are simply a vast international territory between Canada and Mexico. And that is what the Democrats, I believe, have deliberately imposed on our country, and it's going to be up ultimately to the American people to stop them.
And it's sad to say it's probably going to take another 9/11. That will happen.
Well, that's what worries me the most of all. 1.5 million known gotaways. Now, again, those are the people we actually saw crossing the border illegally. We know nothing about them at all. But we do know this. When this administration unconditionally surrendered Bagram Air Force Base, we had the Parwan military detention facility there. It was housing more than 5,000 most dangerous terrorists on the planet. We know where one of those 5,000 went. 10 days later, one of those 5,000 went to Abbey Gate at Kabul airport and detonated a bomb that killed 13 U.S. Marines. We don't know where the other 5,000 are. We do know we've been able to intercept 100 or so known terrorists at the border. We don't know how many are among the 1.5 million gotaways. I am afraid there will come a day when we will suffer a coordinated attack by terrorists who come through our southern border during this period of time. The other thing I worry about a lot is we are introducing the violent cartels into our major cities. How long will it be before we start seeing the kind of gun battles break out in our American cities that have become routine in Mexico?
Well, it's not a matter of if, it's just when. When you don't have a border, it's not a matter of if, it's just when. Mr. McCall and Congressman Green, y'all both on the national security front. How dangerous is what this administration has been doing? How do you put a figure on what is most likely going to affect this country for a long time? How many more 3,000 deaths are we going to have to take before we finally wake up? And this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an American issue.
Yeah, and thanks for the question. I was a counterterrorism federal prosecutor in Texas with the border. I've been dealing with this issue for well over 20 years and chairman of Homeland. But when you have 5 million encounters and 5 million people potentially in this country that have no legal status, where they're manipulated with trafficking, the women get trafficked, the men go to gangs, Mr. McClintock mentioned the numbers on potential terrorists. When I chaired Homeland, that was the stat I asked every week I had my classified briefings. How many special interest aliens got in? How many on the terror watch list? Because that was the number that was the biggest threat. Biggest threat. It has a financial toll that's beyond belief. But then the fentanyls, the human toll on that, 100,000 people dead. That's more than Vietnam over 20 years. 100,000 people, and that number's climbing. It's coming in from China, going through Mexico, and it's going all throughout the United States. When you don't have any accountability and you have a wide open border, you don't know who's coming in, you're really asking for it. Not to mention the crime rate, which we're going to see soar as a result of this, because they're not going to have any legal status. So what do you do living in the shadows? I mean, it's very common sense, as you're pointing out. The dangers this is such a threat to the United States, not only from a criminal standpoint, but a national security standpoint and a drug standpoint. And if we don't get control over this soon, I'm afraid it'll be hard to turn back.
Well, we've got Congressman Green.
Sure. The 1.5 million gotaways, the known number, you can add on to that what Chief Ortiz believes is another 20%, where they get are hits at the fiber optics in the ground, where they know people are coming across, but they're not getting their eyes on, so they don't count those as gotaways. They actually have another term for it, but he thinks that number is another 20%, so another 300, so 1.8 million. And it's interesting right now, if you turn yourself into Customs and Border Patrol, you're going to get released into the country. They're not deporting. They allowed the return agreements to expire with the other countries. So, I mean, you're good. So if you're intentionally avoiding CBP, it begs the question, what's the intent? We talked about the videos earlier of the drug, packs of fentanyl coming in, et cetera. What concerns me more is when we talk to the sector chiefs, and we're gathering testimony from them now, we have in, for example, the Del Rio sector, 25 to 35 Chinese nationals aged 25 to 35 with known associations to the PLA being released into the country every day. Now, that's in one sector a day. You think about the Chinese spy balloon that pretty much everybody in the country was frustrated that was allowed to traverse the country. When we get to the bottom of the numbers of people with affiliations with the PLA coming into the United States and just being released into the country, we're going to get to the bottom of it. That's an upcoming planned hearing because of a whistleblower that came to us. I think people are going to really be shocked at what's really happening at our southern border. But it's our intention to shine a light on that over the coming months.
Well, I'll just close with this. Again, to try to walk this back, I don't know how you do it. With what's going on now, we've 5 million that we think, but more or less, before this administration is over with, we'll have 12 to 15 million. It's like the airline pilot told me off record. He said, we're struggling. We can't catch everybody. That is most likely going to cause another 9/11. And then what will be our reaction? And I think this is a good bill. It's got some the enforcement issues, as I mentioned. It's got, Mr. Chairman Cole, I know what the 20 of us did back in January was to get a 72-hour rule where we get amendments in place early. This violates that. And that's a problem going forward, a huge problem, because that's not the process that I think is fair to everybody. Again, it's not a Democrat or Republican. It's an American democracy the way it ought to work. But thank each one of you for the time. I'm not going to beat a dead horse anymore. And, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I appreciate that. A couple of things. We're getting ready to recess. So, number one, we have 3 votes on the floor. I would advise the witnesses, none of you are excused yet. Your testimony is still here. So, immediately after the 3rd vote, we'd request that you return back up here. Obviously, same thing to the members. So, if you can just get the first two done, cast the third at the beginning. As soon as we've got everybody back, we'll get going again, try and move through this. With that, committee's in recess.